Hello everybody and welcome to my defense of Colleen Hoover's books. So, my name's Claire. I sporadically post on YouTube whenever I just feel like doing it. And that's what I'm going to be doing today, in defense of Colleen Hoover's books. I don't know what to tell you. I just finished reading Reminders of Him, which came out on Tuesday, and I started it yesterday and I finished it today. I feel like I just got another taste of why I think that Colleen Hoover is such an important, influential author and should be read by young woman from 16 to 25, which is her demographic anyways, but why I specifically think that everyone should give her books a try and see if they like them. And I kind of just want to explain why I think that they're important and why they're not trashy literature, and why they're actually good, or at least helpful. I don't know if you would consider them good because good is a very objective term, but I think that they're important. I guess I want to defend them being important and why I think it's really, really amazing that so many people are reading them. So if you guys don't know who Colleen Hoover is, I don't know why you're watching this video. And also, I don't know how you don't if you're in the reading world, which my guess is why this book is on your page and why you clicked on it. Colleen Hoover is a #1 New York Times best-selling author. She's written 23 or 26 books, but I've read 10 of those 23/26 books. So I have a pretty good pretty good grasp on her content. I'm also a literature major in college, and I read all the time. Those are my credentials, I guess. I would say that Colleen Hoover's demographic is 18 to 25-year-old woman, but I find that a lot of 16-year-olds and 17-year-olds read her books, which is one of the reasons why I think that her books are looked down upon, is because they're written for women in that age range, which is usually a demographic that is really, really looked down upon as their taste and is usually made fun of, especially if it involves romance. I would know, but there's a reason why I think that Colleen Hoover is such an important author, and that's because she takes her demographic and she takes things that they probably have dealt with or will deal with, and she makes it into a very compelling, easy to read story that you typically want to just consume in a 24-hour period like I did today or yesterday. In the past 24 hours, I've consumed an entirety of a Colleen Hoover book, and all I want to do is pick up this book on my shelf that I haven't read yet. But a lot of her books, they usually start off as a romance. For the first chapter to maybe the 5th chapter, if we get lucky, as a maximum if we get lucky. The 1st to 5th chapter is romance. Usually involves a sex scene, okay? I'm going to be completely honest. There's usually a scene in there that's a little spicy, a little flavored, okay? I did not mean to make the hand gesture, but I did. It's too late, so it's a little spicy, and it's immediate, girl meets guy, and it's always a girl and a guy, at least for now. And a girl meets guy, girl comes in, guy ooh, she's hot, or girl ooh, he's hot, and then they kiss, they make out, they go on a date, they get a little spicy, and then something happens. Something traumatic and horrible happens, and then we now have to figure out how these two characters are going to come together and how their relationship is going to work, if it is going to work, because sometimes it doesn't work. And that's literally how all of her books go. Now you're probably thinking, why keep reading her books if they all follow the exact same theme? Or not theme, thing. They all, same trajectory. I kind of just want to run down a few of the books that I've read, ones that I think the most popular, and ones that I think kind of just deal with different things. So the first book I'm going to talk about is her most popular book, which is It Ends With Us, which deals with domestic abuse. There is Lily, who's the main character, who develops a very domestically abusive and physically abusive at times relationship with a guy named Ryle. And within the story, you're kind of just seeing how this really, really nice, caring doctor, rich boy, turns into a very angry and physically aggressive man, and how Lily, the main character, slowly realizes that she's dating her father, who dealt with the same things. And corresponding into this is letters or a diary with a boy named Atlas, who is incredibly positive and healthy partner for her. And it really is one of the best ways that I've ever seen domestic abuse be portrayed. And I think it's so important because the thing is that usually domestic abuse stories are really, really hard to read, and I have to read them over the course of weeks sometimes because it's just so hard to read. But Colleen Hoover makes it so that it's not romanticized. You're reading it with that fog, because whenever you're in a traumatic event, there's usually a fog where you say that everything's okay, it'll get better, it'll stop, it'll change, I can change him. All of those types of things. You say those types of things for any type of traumatic events, whether it's loss, grief. You think that somehow, for some reason, that it'll change, and it never does. And I think that Colleen Hoover kind of swept us in with a romance and then quickly changed the book. It doesn't become a romance, really. Sure, she ends up with the guy, but the story is not about romance. The story is about her breaking free of domestic abuse and also getting into a domestically abusive romantic relationship. And that's what's so important. And we see that theme going into Verify. Verify is her thriller. She wrote a thriller. I don't know why, but she tried it out, and guess what? She did a great job. I was very thrilled, in like a negative sense. I was thrilled that, you know what I mean. And there's kind of two ways to view this, which is also an abusive relationship and passing on an abusive relationship. Like being a woman, watching your partner start dating another woman and almost passing on that cycle. You're seeing the cycle continue between abusive woman or abusive man to another abusive woman, to another abusive woman, and you're unable to tell them because you're silenced, and you can't tell them, hey, you're about to enter a really abusive relationship with a man, and it's going to be horrible, you need to get out now, because the man's too scary, and you can't do it, or you're just physically unable to, and you can't. And then, because it's a thriller, and then ambiguously, so we don't really know what happened. It can also be being forced to move on after a relationship where you realize that you fell in love with someone that you had no idea who you were, and in that way, it's also an abusive relationship. And again, Colleen Hoover sucked us in with her romance, and I think that's what Colleen Hoover does, is she starts it out the basic book where I'm like, I've read this before, I don't need to read it again, it's just going to be another stupid romance. And then she immediately, right when you're about to pull out, she puts something in that is just changes the game. And it adds with that element of dealing with a certain type of trauma. We see that with Hopeless, which I have. This is like one of the 2 Colleen Hoover books that I didn't get from the library, so here it is. This book deals with rape. That's important. That is so important for 16 to 25-year-old woman to read about and to understand coming to terms with rape, realizing you were raped. I'm spoiling the book. I'm so sorry. I spoiled it, and I'm not editing this video because I don't know how to yet. But it deals with rape. It's so important. And the way that Colleen Hoover wrote this is, again, started with a romance. Immediately you could tell that something was going to come up, especially if you've already read Colleen Hoover. And this book, this girl slowly finds out that she was SA'd, or she slowly finds out that this has happened to her, and she slowly comes to terms with it, she slowly realizes it, she slowly deals with that grief, she slowly deals with her first, something that should be beautiful and wonderful and a good experience be taken away from her because of someone in her life that she trusted or should have been able to trust, and that it just keeps going. And also those are kind of like domestically abusive stuff. So she also deals with grief. She deals with that in Slammed, and also Point of Retreat, which is, those books go together. They're a pair. Or basically a parent suddenly dies in both of the novels. That's how both of the novels start. So that's cool. And we're seeing it from someone who recently lost a parent and who semi-recently lost a parent, and then they kind of help each other, like, comes to terms with that grief and loss, and you really see them go through you really see the main character, the woman, go through the stages of grief, but it's not, like, super explicit that she's going through them. Colleen Hoover kind of weaves it in a little bit, which is really, really cool. And we also see that in the book Layla, which is they lose a romantic partner and kind of having them deal with that loss. And then also having a man side of an abusive relationship where the man is being abused, except that it kind of goes to that stereotype that the girl was like crazy and obsessive, which is a little bit, that's a choice. Not one that I would have gone with. Maybe I would have gone with like I don't know. But I kind of just mean like it's a kind of stereotypical thing that like he had a crazy ex-girlfriend, except she actually really was probably very mentally ill, and needed a lot of other help with things, and she kind of just took it out on her romantic partner and became incredibly obsessive to the point of like murder. So, you know, that's not great. But both Slammed, Point of Retreat, and Layla all deal with grief in really, really important ways that would really draw in people. And then she completely switches it. Without Merit is another book that she wrote. And this one deals with depression, specifically coming to terms with depression, realizing you have depression, understanding mental illness, understanding how to deal with mental illness, understanding what you need, family problems. Deals with a lot of typical teenager stuff. I would say this is her most like typical teenager book, except that again she draws you in with romance. And I think that's the main thing that Colleen Hoover does, is she knows her demographic, she knows who she's writing for, she knows why her books are being written, and her books are being written to teach young women how to deal and how to understand and realize traumatic, toxic things in your life and then deal with it. Like, that's what her books are about, is realizing an abusive thing and then solving the abusive thing. And I know I'm saying grief and loss is an abusive thing, and it's kind of self-abusive, you know? I don't know, it's kind of, maybe that's not the right term, but you know what I mean. It's a kind of a toxic headspace that you're in, is dealing with grief, and you have to find a way to heal, to get better. And that, I guess that's my defense of Colleen Hoover. I just think that, yes, her books are romances, and yes, they're steamy and spicy, and yes, in her book Slammed and Point of Retreat, she did this typical student-teacher relationship, but she found a way to make it healthy and okay, just like they tried to do in Pretty Little Liars, but it didn't really work. But I was fully convinced at 15 that that was totally okay, even though it is not okay. But yes, Colleen Hoover does those things. Yes, she does tropes. Yes, she wrote a thriller. Yes, she wrote a ghost story. Yes, she did weird stuff in her writing. Yeah, she tried different genres. Good for her. You know, it worked. She sold them all. They're all 4 stars on Goodreads, I think. But that was my defense. I just think that taking a really, really popularized genre and then turning it into something that's really amazing and deals with trauma and showcases that, and showcases it ending positively, or at least semi-positively, or at least coming to terms with it, is incredibly important. And I think that her books are important, whether they're easy to read, whether they're romances, whether whatever. I think that it's good. I think that it is good to have books that make it so accessible for younger people to read about such traumatic things, that sometimes you can only get hit as hard as Colleen Hoover hits you if you read a classic, or if you read a literary fiction novel that is kind of hard to understand. Normal People by Sally Rooney, it's amazing, but it's a little bit hard to understand. It's not like super hard. It's not Jane Eyre, but it's not some novel that you just read at a bar, if you know what I mean. Like, you really gotta sit down and you gotta read it. And that's just my opinion. I don't know. If you have other opinions, comment down below. Comment down below your favorite Colleen Hoover book. If anyone's watching up until this point, I don't even know. But I will see you in the next video. And hopefully it'll be soon, because I've read 12 books. And I would love to review them all for you. So that's gonna be it. And I'm gonna say bye. Bye! Why did I say